Hi, I'm Courtney.
And I'm Beth.
Welcome to Dead Reckoning, the podcast where death isn't the end of the story.
And today we're talking to Steven Welch, who's a fifth-generation funeral director at Duggan's Funeral Service in San Francisco. Welcome, Steven.
Hello.
So as I mentioned, fifth generation, and we'll get into your family history in a minute, but I thought it would be nice to start by just asking, what is your day-to-day life like? Like, what happens throughout the day? What are you up to? What are your other funeral directors doing?
So that would be in relation to specifically the funeral business. You know, I've been doing this since, I got put on regular payroll, like full-time, on my 17th birthday.
Oh.
And I'm 61 now. So that's like 44 years, right? So my day-to-day now is not the same as my day-to-day would have been, say, 10 years ago.
Yeah, of course.
Now I spend a lot of time volunteering with different organizations and doing less come in and doing day-to-day operations than I would have for like the first 40 years.
Fair enough, but maybe you could take us through a day in the life of the funeral home.
Sure. So when does the day start is a good question, like definitions or something. So, it's a 24-hour business. Somebody's on call, whether it's a family member or one of the management team. When we close up in the evening, we'll put the phones on answering service. In the old days, they would be call forwarded. Before that, we had remote extensions in our houses. So
wow.
I grew up in a house where my dad had a business phone, a remote extension at his bed, and another one in the closet down on the main living floor.
Wow.
And his mother, my grandmother, had the business phone. I think the technical term was off-site extension or something. I can't remember now how it used to come on the phone bill. But, now everybody got cell phones and you could call forward it to your cell phone. So if the person who's on call isn't able to take a call on their cell phone, then we have the answering service as a backup. Most businesses just go directly to answering service. To us, it's a backup option. So, like, for example, we would close up around 5 or 6. Vaughn will they'll call forward the phones to his cell phone. But if he's at a dinner or an event or working a visitation in church at night, he'll send them to the answering service first so they can filter out all those. What time is this? What's your address? When's that service happening? So we send a sheet to the answering service of everything that's happening so they can answer simple questions and just put the more involved, like emergency kind of first calls. We call and you get that first contact telephone call from legal next of kin, usually that someone's passed away and they need to make an appointment and they need to have things happening and they need answers right now. So we call that a first call. So those will get put through to one of us no matter what by the answering service. But, small family operations still like to answer the phone themselves as much as possible.
That makes sense.
That's what happens during the night. And then, we first people to show up are showing up early, like at 7 to do cleaning and getting the cars gassed up and cleaned up. And everyone else is showing up at 8. And maybe a couple people, in support roles will show up at 9. Lots of times we have to get ready and head out for morning funerals pretty early.
Steve, when you say you're going to morning funerals, do you mean you're going to the graveside?
That's possible, especially, if it's a graveside only. But when I say funeral, I mean like we're going to church.
Oh, okay.
So and then you'd go to the cemetery or the crematory after church.
I see. That makes sense.
And so that crew, that director and driver assistant, will be gone for 4 or 5 hours, typically during the day, out taking care of making sure that funeral is done properly. We do have chapel services here in the mortuary. And so, some people will only be gone for an hour or an hour and a half if they're just going from here to the cemetery or the crematory and back. So we have 3 hearses, and if we have more than 3 services in a day, we'll rent a hearse from somebody else, and somebody else will often rent our hearse.
That's something new.
Directors will often, be gone and be on duty during those services from when they start getting ready to go in the morning until they're done, which can be 1:30 to 3 in the afternoon, and don't get a lunch break.
Yeah, it's a long day, sounds like.
It's a long day, and they're they're on stage the whole time, because they're directing a ritual and a public event. It's not like they can say, oh, I got my lunch break now, see you later.
Yeah, they can't be on like TikTok up there scrolling Facebook during these services, right? You're right. All eyes.
Yeah.
And I imagine it must be emotional too. There's got to be an emotional toll to being around that much, just like outpouring of emotion all day. It's not, I would imagine that would take a toll on you. What do you think?
It's a stressful occupation that people don't realize. The young people that get into it, they have no idea what they're getting into. They do, you do have to take these psychology courses at mortuary school. If you go to mortuary school, most of them don't. Mortuary school is designed to teach you, how to be an embalmer. Mm-hmm. And then there's also, some funeral procedures and directing, because traditionally embalmers were also the funeral directors. We really have gotten away from that, both on the way California regulates, in that, they're selling all these funeral directors licenses to everybody that, has a history degree or, chemical biology degree or anything. As long as you have a college degree, you can take the exam.
You don't have to have a mortuary science degree or something?
Only to be an embalmer.
Oh, I see.
And
okay.
That is, that is being less taken advantage of by the public.
You mean fewer people are being embalmed?
Yeah, because fewer people are religious. Fewer people are traditional. Fewer people live near their extended family. More people just want to, have it over with as soon as and as easy as possible, and so that the trend towards just immediate cremation with no service, or maybe we'll have a private party in a month or 3 months, whenever it's convenient for everybody, is replacing the old. Somebody passed away, everybody drops everything for a couple of days, and then the 3rd or 4th day, the funeral happens. Like that, not only does that almost never happen anymore, when it does, it can be a problem because the state has changed the way we file a death certificate, so it's nearly impossible for me to do what I used to do. When I started, the funeral on the 3rd day or the 4th day was the norm. And now it's very rare. And I could drive out, I could meet with the family, collect the information for the death certificate. That whole meeting might take 45 minutes or an hour. And then I would drive over to the doctor's office and wait till he had a gap between 2 patients. And he would sign the death certificate, fill out the cause of death. Then I would drive to the health department and file it, and they would hand me, and often they they had a separate window for funeral directors. So I didn't have to wait in the line of everyone ordering birth.
With the civilians. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, all the rookies that didn't have their paperwork ready, etc. And so often, maybe there'd be one person in front of me in line at the funeral director window. Usually nobody. So I could go up, hand it to them. They'd proofread it. You know, if there were no errors, they'd like stamp it, go back, make the photocopies. Here's your copies of your death certificate. Here's your permit. Done. And so, you know, we would get calls from out of town funeral directors saying like, you know, we have this family sitting in here with me. You know, like let's say they're from Alliance, Nebraska, and you know their uncle died, and they want him buried in the family plot here, and like, can you get him here tomorrow? And I'd be like, sure, sure, no problem.
Yeah.
Like now that's like nearly impossible because it takes like 2 days minimum, and we're seeing it go to 4 and 5 days to get the death certificate filed.
Why is that?
So they switched over to an electronic death registry system, which, you know, the positive side is we don't have to get in a car and drive anywhere and park anymore. But they created these rules where, well, this person that works for the health department gets 2 hours to proofread it. So they don't have to respond to you for 2 hours. And if you start asking them in an hour, like, is it okay? They're like, leave me alone. It's not 2 hours yet. And
because you're not standing in front of them at the window, right?
Yeah. And, you know, and then 2 hours goes by, and then they have a lunch break, and then they find an error, and then like you have to go back and start the whole thing over again.
Oh no.
Doctor's offices, same thing. You're not there anymore, and they won't respond for a day or two often.
Yeah.
They're required to complete it in 15 hours. That never gets enforced.
Death bureaucracy.
Yeah. So the fact that people trended towards, well, you know, we're getting cremated and then scattered at sea, and there's no urgency on our part, was taken advantage of by the government. They're like, oh, you don't really need those services anymore. And if we get like a Muslim that wants to be in the ground in 24 hours.
I was just thinking about that.
It's very limited on whether that can be provided or not, depending on what county you pass away in, because they all have different rules. And here in the Bay Area, I have a bunch of small counties all around me. You know, I'm not in the middle of Fresno County, a gigantic county. It's, you know, they're going to pass away in a hospital in Alameda County, and they want to get buried on Saturday. Well, there's a 1 hour window where we can present the death certificate to get filed.
Yeah.
And if we miss that, then we miss the whole day.
Well, and families do need the death certificate for other reasons, like to send to debtors or whoever else.
Yeah, life insurance. Like there's a bunch of reasons that I can think of.
Bank.
Yeah, bank accounts, yeah.
They come in the mail, and once again, it depends on the county, their level of, you know, how busy they are and their staffing and everything. And, you know, around here, it's not bad, but I tell people, like, you're going to have to expect to wait like 10 days.
That is crazy.
10 business days, which is 2 weeks. Now, often they'll come sooner, in fairness, less than 10 days, depending on how busy they are. But that's the norm. That's the expectation now. If there's an amendment filed to it, like they did a change, like, well, we want this changed, then the delay could be months because they want it cleared through Sacramento first. Going back to your original question, because we got off on a tangent of the pressure of timing, you know, the family has expectations. They want the death certificate, and we'll have to give them the bad news. We have to be the ones to say, you can't have it right away. Like, well, we can't access the bank account, you know.
Right.
We thought insurance was going to pay for this. And if it's an outside policy, yeah, they need it. And they can't even, you know, submit the claim for a minimum of 2 weeks. And so it does create a problem for a lot of people. We also see the federal government has changed to where the funeral home used to assist and apply for VA benefits, and they would pay the VA benefits to the funeral home. And then I don't know why, but I think Service Corporation International had something to do with it. Like they didn't want to pay all their staff at their hundreds of funeral homes across the country to be doing this extra work. So they lobbied and got the VA to say, we won't pay funeral homes anymore. So
Wow.
the family has to pay us ahead of time and then get reimbursed.
Oh,
And a lot of
that's
these
no
old
good.
veterans don't have the money to pay the upfront costs.
A
Right.
lot of
So the
people don't
giant
have the
corporation-
money.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
people don't. And the giant corporation like SCI doesn't care about that. I can't believe the VA went along with it, but they did. And there are several unions that also do that too. But I think their mentality is that, well, we don't trust every funeral director, so we don't want to give them any money. We want to give it to the family. And believe me, we've been burned on people that were going to pay us after they got the union benefit and then never did.
Oh no.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh no.
So the original question was like the stress on the staff. And so not only are you taking on responsibility to make sure everything goes right for this family, and it's become a lot more complicated due to the California regulatory environment since I started. So you have that pressure of you got to make sure no details are missed, overlooked, no requests are missed or overlooked. You also have to be working with several different moving pieces, like the venue, the officiant, the deliveries of different things like flowers, printed items.
Yeah, you're kind of an event planner too, right?
100% are event
Yeah.
planners, which is something that funeral directors, I think originally back in the undertaking days, that was something that set them apart from just going to a livery stable and hiring a horse-drawn hearse to the family moving the body, because that definitely was one of the beginning points. But then you read about like Mark Twain talking about attending a funeral in Missouri when he was a kid, and the funeral director gathering all the chairs from the community so the house would be full of chairs so everyone would have a chair.
Oh.
That was like the earliest American funeral story that I've seen, like an eyewitness account.
Yeah, I think going back to what you were saying a minute ago, if I recall, there was another funeral home in the early days of San Francisco that started out as a stagecoach company, and then they started taking bodies to the cemeteries.
Well, there were livery stables that owned hearses and rented them out. And that tradition probably didn't finally come to an end. I don't have an exact date for you, but Associated was the name of the company. And they were here in the Mission District. And they had hearses and limousines, like I'd say into the mid 1970s.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But in those days, at the same time, you still had a lot of small funeral homes left in the city that didn't.
Right.
If they owned a hearse, they owned one, and so if they had two funerals on the same day, they needed to run one.
Yeah.
What is what is it like in the city now with funeral homes? Are there many left? I think I read that there were 2 left on Valencia.
So there's one left on Valencia Street, and then we're a half a block off of Valencia
That's right.
Street.
You guys moved around the corner, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And sort of around the corner, but we were on Valencia Street from 1918 to 1932. And then we moved to this location, which is a half a block off Valencia. Valencia was like a very popular street for funeral homes. There was also some funeral homes on Mission Street. HF Soar was on Mission near 24th. Valenia Marina Prada was like further out in the Excelsior, like another neighborhood out quite a ways. We're talking like 2 miles away down Mission Street. But before 1906, there was quite a few, like HF Soar started on Mission Street, but closer down to like 8th Street, There was 3 or 4 funeral directors on Mission Street, like between 5th and 8th or 9th.
Mm-hmm.
There was quite a few there. There was also 2 or 3 even closer than that to City Hall. See, and then my great-great-grandfather was the first one to open up on Valencia Street, like between 16th and 17th, just around the corner from here. And you look at, if you had a map and there was dots where all these undertakers were, you could see that, oh, that's because it's like a 5-10 minute walk from City Hall. So they would walk down and file the death certificate.
Right. Well, and as I recall, too, there was a streetcar line along there that made it convenient for people to come to the funeral homes to do business or to take their loved ones on to Colma once Colma started to be the place to bury people.
Yeah, I've always known about that, been raised with that, seen photos. The cemeteries would have their own sightings and stations. But there was another center of funeral homes after 1906 that moved out to Divisadero. So similarly to Valencia was Divisadero kind of corridor. Although not as many, there was 3 or 4 in a strip there. And then I neglected to say that, the original funeral directors in San Francisco were down on Sacramento Street below DuPont, which is Kearney now.
Mm-hmm.
And that'd be like N. Gray, the first funeral director, and Atkins Massey.
I'm just going to interject. Nathaniel Gray is kind of like a legend in San Francisco funeral history. And it is because of him that we have as many burial records as we do, because he kept such meticulous records and they were not destroyed in the earthquake and fire.
Yeah, he served as, in the early days, he was the county coroner. I don't think he liked having that job because he kind of let somebody else have it as soon as other people started popping up. But he was on the board of trustees of Laurel Hill Cemetery, sold cemetery plots, and Atkins Massey was did the same thing for the Yerba Buena Cemetery, which didn't last very long. But
we've done an episode on Yerba Buena. That's probably going to be our first episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Atkins Massey's advertisements are like, you can come here to the funeral home and buy your plot. And Nathaniel Gray was doing the same thing for the other cemetery.
Right.
It was kind of like their one-stop shopping, which interestingly
affiliates,
circles around to modern society where the only new funeral homes built, I want to say in my lifetime, but there's some exceptions, were built on cemetery properties. So once again, the ones
interesting
shopping kind of thing.
I mean, that makes sense, right?
Yeah. So a lot of the older cemeteries got bought cheaply by big chains, and then they can use their endowment fund money to build a funeral home on it. So they don't even need a bank. And so that's a nice competitive advantage that somebody discovered, and there you go. It's more complicated than that, but that's the Cliff Notes version.
Some of the historians of San Francisco put together maps of the funeral homes that used to be on Valencia Street, and a lot of them in particular were Irish owned too, as I recall. I'll see if we can share that when we get this episode out. But since we're talking about history, do you want to talk about your family's history running funeral homes in San Francisco?
Sure, I can talk a little bit about that. So the first one to decide to go into the undertaking business was James Hagan, and he worked with his wife as his partner in the business, and her maiden name was Sarah Letitia Goforth, and they met and married over in San Leandro, and then moved to San Francisco, and he was working for a tinsmith south of Market, and sometimes they would make sealer containers for bodies that had died from diseases. And, one of the things that started delineating the early undertakers from just a livery stable was selling coffins and caskets and stuff. And I mean, if you look at Nathaniel Gray's advertising, he's like got imported, special named brands of fancy caskets from, back east or wherever. But, come to our coffin wear rooms kind of thing. And
we would have gone.
So she had been a seamstress, believe it or not. When they first got married, they had followed the circus around, and she made costumes and stuff for the performers. So she knew how to sew. And even as a kid, I remember my grandmother saying, like, oh yeah, my grandmother would finish the interiors, make the interiors. Mm-hmm. So they rented a space at on the 500 block of Valencia Street. Typically in those days, undertakers, they're advertising undertaking parlors, or that was generally the terminology, were like small storefronts. And there are photos available online where you can see some of these small storefronts in either single story, like a taxpayer kind of construction, or in the first floor, a commercial space in a larger building. I've seen both. And then the livery service was somewhere else, a block away or 2 blocks away, or whatever, however they did it. And so he was there until that building burned down in 1906. But in between 1883 and 1906, he had a younger brother who had come from England. So James, by the way, was born in Oldham, which is near Liverpool for our purposes. His mother was from Liverpool. His father was from Ireland. And he was the oldest of a large family. I think 9 kids. I'll have to check that to be sure. But so when he leaves Liverpool, working as a crew member on a sailing ship, when he's like 15, some of his younger brothers and sisters weren't even born yet. And James's brother Joseph was like 10 years younger than him. And that might not be exactly right. I'd have to check, but roughly. Joseph had come out on his own and was working up in Humboldt County on the logging railroads, and came down in 1883 when James decided to open his own undertaking business. He's like, I need a partner, because one person can't go out, file the death certificates, get the hearse, bring the hearse to the people's house, prepare the body, assemble the casket and all this, and also be at the funeral home if someone else were to show up, because we didn't even have telephones then. Everyone just walked over to the funeral home and walked in the front door and said, my husband's dead and here's his address, and get to work. So you'll see that they almost all had partners. Nathaniel Gray rarely advertises another name, although there was a brother in some of the early ads, but he had staff. And Atkins Massey, same thing. And although he later took on some interesting stories about good people, but they had interesting lives partners, including the first female funeral director in San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
But she was only allowed to advertise for like 1 year. And they're like, what are you doing? I had this feeling.
Female
it was like, what are you doing advertising for yourself? Are you going to the competition with me?
Do you remember her name? I'm curious.
Not off the top of my head, but she lived in the mortuary. So I'm like, I know she was involved somehow.
Wow.
Same address as the mortuary on Sacramento.
Steve, can I ask? I always had the impression that a lot of the funeral homes, or the older ones, had living quarters, maybe upstairs or behind, and then the business would be conducted in the front of the house. Or
yeah,
is that true? Or
for a lot of them, it's true. Yes. Someone had to be there 24/7.
Yeah, you're there, right?
Yeah.
On site.
And even later when we had telephones, as they started, the first, I know I'm jumping around here a little bit, but the first like standalone custom designed as a mortuary building in San Francisco was built by McAvoy and O'Hara. They're still in business.
Yeah.
Well, it was finished in 1905.
Oh, no.
And so it lasted less than a year. There's no photos. There's no existing plans.
Oh.
But when they started doing that, they included living quarters for the attendants because you didn't have like answering services and multiple phone lines and all that stuff. You still had somebody there to answer the door 24/7. And visitations typically lasted, if they didn't go all night around the clock, like say the old Irish ones would be.
Right, the old Irish wakes, right?
The funeral homes generally stayed open until 11 p.m. until the 1971 strike when they changed it to 9 p.m. 11 p.m. So, I mean, there's a story where my great-grandfather, William Duggan, had just got back from one of his trips. And he stayed in the apartment above the mortuary here when it was convenient for him. So we actually have two small apartments in the mortuary here. And he come down in his nightgown, like even men used to wear this big white night robe thing. And went to the back of the chapel and yelled, "Go home and use your own heat." It's like they were being too noisy. He couldn't sleep. He's chasing them all out. Yeah.
Yeah. Courtney, I don't think I've mentioned this to you before, but my Weingartner grandfather ran a funeral home inherited from his dad. And so he and my grandmother had one side that was the funeral business and the other side was where they lived. But then they had a fire and the whole thing burned down. And this was shortly before they started having kids, so they didn't go back to it.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, that explains a lot, Beth.
So another aspect, getting back on the subject about, the stress on the staff, another aspect is like today's society seems to be, it's almost like the road rage society where you're insulated from treating the other people as a human being.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so.
And then so you're much more likely to, flip them off, yell at them, do aggressive stuff because you don't know them. You'll never see them again. You could be mean to them. And like that has come down into society. And like I had one incident of that, I want to say in 1999 or 2000. First time I ever saw it happen to one of my staff. She comes out of the arrangement office crying. I'm like, what happened? She's like, well, his hairdresser, that he wanted his hairdresser to come and do his mom's hair, never showed up last night. And he's yelling at me like it's my fault. Now, we do know that people are under stress.
Stress,
at this
yeah.
time, and that sometimes that brings out the worst in people. But I still think that was crossing a line, like abusing the staff over something that's not under our control. And so I didn't really take it. I took it more as that was his individual problem. And then it was going to be a thing going forward in society. Like we have a bunch of terrible Yelp reviews, and they're all from like brothers, sisters, aunts, like other members of the family that didn't get their way with the family. And so they're angry and take it out on the funeral director.
Oh, no.
I'm going to Yelp bomb you because this went wrong. And we look at it and go, well, they weren't really the customer. 9 times out of 10,
Yes.
They weren't even the customer.
I mean, you're doing a level of family counseling, but maybe not that level of family counseling.
Yeah,
Yeah, for real. And you know what they say? They say that like like around when someone dies, especially someone like who's kind of important in the family, that people start taking it out on each other, and like kind of all the skeletons start coming out of the closet, all the old resentments start coming out, and they're taking it out on the people around them, right? It's easier to yell at Steven, the funeral director, than to have a frank conversation.
I've lost a couple of very good people, great arrangers. One was also a licensed embalmer, and it was 100% like they couldn't take these abusive situations anymore, and it was like for their own personal mental health.
That's so sad.
That they walk away from the industry. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I first asked you that question, I was thinking about witnessing the grief. I didn't even think about like hostile, aggressive customers taking their grief rage out on your staff.
And of course, the press has fed into it my entire lifetime and watched us being portrayed as evil, bad people, and almost never as, an important part of society. When COVID hit, and they're like, the emergency workers, the first responders, the necessary people to make the hospital people, they all go to work tomorrow. And I looked at my staff, I go, no, you're coming to work tomorrow, because even though they didn't remember to include us, they need us.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous. But it's like a disease in society that's being spread by certain elements of the media that just that's my personal biased opinion as the victim.
Do you think there's an element of being critical of people in the funeral industry because of the greater, like, just taboos around death in general? Like, we don't want to deal with death, therefore these people are a little bit suspicious.
Not exactly that, but I think what you're touching on is the old, like, Jessica Mitford mentality.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Like, I don't know why you Americans are having these rituals and paying this money to this industry. I think you should not have these rituals and not pay any money. Right?
I have read the book, and the book is interesting. It's not a Bible to live by. It is interesting, and I think it's known culturally for having to at least broach the topic of talking about it. And there are so many people who they don't even have wills, like they're going to live forever, because they just, even talking about it means accepting the inevitability of it. So in some ways, it's good that she got the conversation started, but that is something that I thought of. And also, that there's like a ritual is so important in
absolutely
life's events. I was thinking about this when you were talking about the delayed funerals. I'm going to take a risk here and say that I hate that shit, because I want to mourn now, right?
Yeah.
Like, how can we move on if we can't? This, like, celebration of life a year later in another location is so disorienting.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
no offense to anyone whose celebration of life I've been to recently, but I prefer a funeral.
There's been a couple of incidents where I knew the person very well. I worked with them in volunteer organizations or my Catholic fraternity, and the person passes away, and the kids are like, the most recent one is like, you're not having a mass? This guy was like super Catholic, and that's how I knew him, from a Catholic fraternity. And you're going to have a party at a yacht club where I don't know anybody? Like, I don't see the point of me going. The Jessica Mitford, probably, as a caveat, Americans should know that she came from, a British aristocratic, wealthy family, and was the black sheep communist. that rebelled against all economies and societal norms
and religions.
And
yeah.
so we're
okay.
us dumb Americans were easy pickings. And I knew when I went to mortuary college in 1985, and some of my instructors remembered her because she used their library to skim through all of the trade magazines and everything. They didn't know that she was just cherry picking all the worst examples to support her argument. They felt betrayed. That's what they told us in school.
This leads into a question that I was going to ask later, but maybe it's important to ask it now. Have you watched the series 6 Feet Under? Or have you watched Caitlin Doughty Ask Her Mortician on YouTube, or any of those kinds of things that make the funeral industry, I think, a little bit more accessible?
So I did watch 6 Feet Under. I found it very engaging for me to watch because, I have relatives also in the funeral business.
Mm-hmm.
We don't own each other's businesses. We're all independently owned at the time. Since then, one of them has sold out and gone out of business. The company's still there with the name on it, but their strangers own it now. But not them, but the other ones. And I was watching the first, couple of episodes going like, man, whoever wrote this must have worked for my cousins. Because I can completely relate these things happening to things that I've heard had happened. Or the family structure, like the father figure having passed away, the 2 sons, the strong mother, exact copy of my cousin's mortuary.
Interesting.
That's cool.
One brother, really aggressively wants to do it. The other one, different story. Exactly. There was just too many similarities. But then it got, as the episodes went on, the seasons went on, it got more and more crazy. Further and further away from.
It's still HBO.
Everyday funeral business, and I'm like, not. But the other one, I don't follow. I watch YouTube every day. I do not follow any of the mortician or undertaker channels or shows. I did post. I have like this own personal rule of thumb where the most I'll talk about funeral directing on Facebook or my social media is I'll post a picture of my new hearse in front of a church. Not with recognizable people in it, because you don't want to offend anybody that might be sensitive about that.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to take their grief and market it to my advantage.
Yeah.
That would be wrong too. But I'm proud of my hearse, and I get around, and people like to see the tour of the different churches in town. So that's acceptable. But it's been acceptable to my friends. I have not had any negative feedback on, just a church and a car or 2 cars. But the Pope's hands, I saw a post in an article or something, and it had our late deceased Pope Francis's hands, and I was like, oh my God! I mean, I've seen. I think our funeral directing and our care of the remains is surpassed by nobody in the entire Bay Area, maybe outside of New York City. Honestly, if you could come here and I could show you how we prepare and lay out, present a human remains, which I think is the core business, the purpose why we exist.
Right.
And then we'll go to another random funeral that has an open casket, and I can show you the differences. Like randomly, I'm confident we will beat every single time.
Wait, but what happened with the Pope's hands?
The job was so bad.
Oh, it was bad.
that there
I
were
thought you were going to
several
say good.
people started sending me like YouTube videos that other embalmers, like the mortician lady you mentioned, critiquing how the Pope was laid out. I'm like, this is even more than what I saw. And she was right. The way it was laid out. But the hands were not positioned right, before you embalm somebody. You might have to relax their muscles. And you can get the hands to lay correctly and relaxed looking.
There's a protocol.
This is not good.
Saying. Yeah.
This is wrong. This means they were embalmed like that, and then you bent them into place.
You can't.
That's ridiculous.
Pope, like we.
And it was obvious to us. The fingernails weren't even cleaned. If you get good fluid distribution, the fingernails will look normal, and if you don't, they'll be discolored. There was discoloration. The embalming job in general was like
subpar.
It was subpar is the nice word. And these other embalmers online saw it and agreed with it. So I posted a picture of the Pope's hands. And I'm like, this is appalling. If you not only do you do it right every time, but you're even more aware of how everything has to be perfect when you know it's going to be a big funeral.
And it's going to be national news, international news.
It was world news. And to us, a big funeral is like 300 to 500 people are going to see this body. To us, that's a big funeral. There's millions and millions and millions, like 100 million people. And
maybe Italy needs to get their act together.
They sent out, the Vatican released a misinformation article stating that they used a technique that's better than the Americans because it involves proper positioning. They gave it a different name, some Greek name or something. You know? And
they used Latin, just to throw you off the scent.
Yeah, I was like, I've never heard that terminology before. And then they're saying, because it involves properly positioning and dressing and cosmetizing. And all, that's everything an embalmer here does. What do you think we do? I'm like, this was a damage control article.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, that's like their whole game.
Yeah.
Damage control over
Vatican
there.
News. Yeah. People sent me that too. I was like, I can't believe they're trying to make
this is fake news.
We're calling them out on not doing a good job. And, there was the papal embalmers that everyone learned about when Pope John Paul I passed away so suddenly and unexpectedly, and they embalmed him before they could get blood samples and stuff to see if he was poisonous or not.
Wow.
That sounds also very Vatican adjacent, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, is it the same guys?
The red seal was on the door.
Like, that's so long ago. Maybe those guys have been done away with. And there's who knows?
That is crazy.
They're their own country. They can make their own rules. So who knows who did it?
Wow. One of the things that we have been talking about internally here is this new HBO documentary, The Mortician, which is about, do you remember the guy's name?
Lamb. So actually,
Lamb
the name was, what was it? Sconce?
Sconce.
Yeah. So I actually did watch, I stayed up late the first night and watched the 2 episodes that are out. But remember, I was working in the business when that happened.
Yeah. I suspected you might have remembered
I asked Beth, I was like, is it tacky to ask him about this mortician show? Because I want to know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fine. And so 1987, that's the year that I finished my apprenticeship and I got both my embalmer's license and and I passed the state used to have a manager's exam that you took. One person associated to each funeral establishment license had to have passed this manager's exam. And so, I took it because my dad was the manager. And if he passed away, I'd have to have it to keep the license alive.
Right.
So when they invented this funeral license law, actually the state regulatory agency, which was still the was it called, the State Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers, opposed selling more licenses. But I think that the reason why it changed was pushed through politically. And it's interesting, when the regulatory agency opposes something, it still passes. So it's political muscle, will, that made this happen. Was that at the same time, Service Corporation International, the Lowen Group, the big chains had come into California, buying up all these funeral home assets, and the only penalty that could be put on a funeral home for employees misbehaving was on the establishment license. So their investment is being threatened. So they're like, well, we need to have these funeral directors' licenses sold to people, so they're the ones that are responsible when things go wrong. And we can negotiate to keep our license. We can throw these people to the wind. And that's the only reason why I think you can justify this. And the fact that you don't have to have gone to mortuary school or know anything about the business and have zero training. You could take a quick course, a study course. It's not even required that you take a study course. You could just read some information or whatever, and all it is making you do is tear it out, what the regulations are, so you can memorize the regulations enough to pass the test, and you're now funeral director. And you've never directed a funeral, maybe you never attended one, you don't know anything about handling bodies. None of that matters in the test.
I mean, in theory, Sconce knew all that stuff. He apparently went to, Cypress College.
He went to some kind of school, but wasn't he kind of fucking around? Yeah.
He was multi-generational funeral directing family. So in theory, he knew what he was supposed to be doing. But I suppose, I guess what I wonder is, because there's other stories like this, is there something about the industry that tempts people into trying to do shoddy work and make a lot of money? Or is it just sort of endemic to how humans are in any industry?
Well, first I was going to say that there's definitely bad eggs all over the world in every place you go. And that's why you need regulatory agencies. You have to have a contract with a contractor. There's that where there's going to be bad apples no matter what. My second point is, you're going to find out that was not just him, that there was other family members that knew what was going on, and it was a multi-generational deviancy from the norm, and he just carried it to a crazy extreme. And the third point is that all these really huge, dramatic, disastrous, damaging scenarios that have played out in my career, all of them have to do with cremation. So Jessica Mitford handed us a cheap alternative to, having a community event. Everyone watches that body go in the ground. It's done. Right? To operators that are like, oh, I can make a lot of money. I just get some vans and make a contract with a crematory, and, I don't have to do any real work. I could go 9 to 5. I don't have, I can have an answering service take down information and call back in the morning, because it's never a rush.
But also, funerals are very expensive, right? So not everyone has. So, maybe they're trying to fill a need, but
I don't mind addressing the funerals are expensive issue.
Yeah, please do.
Yes, please.
So how much did you spend on the car you're driving right now? It was probably 10,000 or more
Yes.
on average, right? And the funeral is 10,000 or less.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't think people spend, there's people that go to Vegas or just run down to City Hall and spend zero on a wedding. And then there's people that spend 100,000, 400,000 on a wedding. It's up to them. But, saying that, and now the same people that have the, $100,000 wedding are also spending the 10,000 on the funeral because we don't have separate prices for different people. It
Mm-hmm.
is what it is.
Yeah.
Our services are what they are on the price list. It's available online. If you don't have the money, and this is something that people don't know because they're never going to be told it in the media, but if you don't have the money and you come in and you have a frank discussion with the funeral director, something can usually be worked out.
That's good to know.
I was wondering about that because I was doing some research for a friend who was maybe having to plan a funeral. So I was looking online to get her an idea of how much it would cost. And I was surprised to see that every funeral home had a full layout. I was wondering if that's a regulation or something. They had a very specific layout of costs. And
it is.
Yeah.
It is. Federal Trade Commission, they came out with the funeral rule 1978, and there are specific things that have to be on your price list. So you'll usually see that the general price list, that's the name of it, according to the Federal Trade Commission. Like professional services is the first item, and then there's usually embalming if you offer it. You're not required to even sell it or offer it if you don't want to. Like a lot of cremation places don't. Cosmetizing, dressing, layout.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that we pay staff to do.
Mm-hmm.
And people somehow think that, if they go to a restaurant and they spend $100 on a big dinner, or a properly done dinner, and $75 to $100 now is kind of the going rate if you go to a restaurant in San Francisco.
Oh, at least, yeah.
Yeah. That they shouldn't pay that to a person that's, doing skilled work. It's no different than cooking the food, right?
And there were also, you could see there were add-ons, like depending on how long you wanted the service and in-house flowers and things like that. It was interesting.
Yeah. Those would not be required by the FTC, but often are there.
Yeah.
Like direct cremation with the container provided by the family. So the direct cremation without the cremation container, that's a required charge. Forwarding remains, that's a required charge. We usually have immediate burial. So, similar to direct cremation, direct burial. And, if you already own a plot, that's usually cheaper.
Yeah, I was going to ask about pre-needs too, because I know many of my grandparents had those, right? Where they had gone in and said, I bought my plot. I want everything paid for so that my family doesn't have to. Do you have a lot of those?
We do. And I suggest that people purchase an insurance policy.
Yeah.
Because it's permanent. It can't be stolen by the bank. When I started, insurance was not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't say not a thing, but they were like a tiny segment of the pre-need, pre-arrangement business. And they were these outside independent guys that were knocking on doors, selling insurance policies. They weren't, as a rule, run but through funeral homes. Of course, there's some exceptions, but people used to open bank accounts, bank trust accounts. The funeral homes can run their own trust account. I'm glad we never started doing that here because it's a regulatory headache.
Yeah, what a headache.
Yeah. For a few pennies. But people would come in and you'd go down to the bank, you'd draw up a contract, this is what you want, this is how much it costs. Go down to the bank, like go to Wells Fargo, B of A, Mission National Bank, whatever, and open a passbook savings account. And it'd be like, Hugh Riley in trust for Duggan's funeral service. So when Hugh Riley dies, we go down there with a death certificate because we're the trustee, and they pay us. They close the account and give us the money. Well, obviously those didn't keep up with inflation. And then the bank started getting real aggressive on escheating these accounts to the state. And Wells Fargo, I remember, was the one that started like charging fees, like a monthly fee. Like some of these were a direct cremation in the 80s was still like $450. Well, that was below the minimum. So Wells Fargo sees this account and starts charging a monthly handling fee and dissolves all the money. The bank statements are going to Hugh Riley. We're not getting them. We don't know. The money has disappeared until he dies.
Famous actors for good.
So
America.
Once again, funeral homes getting burned. Do you think Hugh Riley got turned over to the county as an indigent?
Maybe.
No.
It depends on who was running it, right? Yeah.
No, family-owned funeral homes would not do that to anybody.
That's good. Yeah.
I know the other funeral directors in town from the day. Nobody did that. If somebody did that, we'd hear it in gossip.
It'd get around. Yeah.
We'd hear about it. And they're sticking us with all their cases. They would complain. Like we used to know everybody. Used to go down there to make a removal. You'd read the information sheet that you'd sign off when you picked up a body. So you'd see the story. You'd be like, oh, okay. So I know I need to worry about that when I'm embalming the guy. Oh, he has tuberculosis, this, that. Like they hide all that from us now. And I haven't even been down to the new medical exam, Office of the Chief Medical Examiner.
Oh, the one out by, it's out by Heron's Head Park, right?
Yeah.
Out in, what would you call that? Bayview, I guess,
Bayview.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never even gone there.
I drove by it and I was like, oh.
I mean, we have our own
new.
removal staff, and I haven't done removals like that for, I don't know, 6, maybe 10 years. In the last 10 years, the only removals I go on is house removals for friends of mine that die at home.
Yeah, or hospitals or something, right? You guys
Rarely.
probably aren't.
I mean, if I can go to the bed, pick them up with the family there, I'll go. But if they're going to hold them and transfer them to a morgue, I'm just going to send one of my drivers. Yeah.
I think this might be my last question for today. What do you wish people knew about funeral business that you feel like people don't know, don't understand?
The cemetery business is a completely different world. And the fact that they're commingled on the regulatory side, we have one State Department that just sees over time has morphed to not be positive to the funeral business because the people they hire there have no idea who they're dealing with. And I think they should. If you're going to be the moral authority on any industry, you should know something about it.
Seems fair.
That was interesting that in that story about the Lamb funeral home, that the state inspector that they interview was from the trust account side, not the funeral inspecting side, which is a completely different inspector. He would not be expected to understand anything about cremation or funeral directing. He's an accounting bookkeeping type of inspector. But that was just something that I noticed was odd about that. So in the cemetery side, they're allowed to pay commissions. We don't pay commissions to people to go out and find bodies for us. And
Oh,
not only do we not do it,
wow.
but it's been illegal for 100 years.
Yeah, that's pretty gross.
I mean,
Yeah.
that happened because there was, one guy hanging out at the coroner's office harassing every family.
Oh, no.
And so
It's all it takes is one. Yeah.
and they were paid. And this goes all the way back to the days of the Vigilance Committee taking over San Francisco and eliminating all of the corrupt politicians and political operatives and their allies. Is when those corrupt guys got control of San Francisco, they named a coroner. That was one of their inside people. And you only see him around for about a year, and then they get rid of him with the.
Do you remember which coroner that was?
His name was Whaling, Whaling. So they were, hanging out and steering. But the cemetery business is totally legal, and it happens all the time. And they use it to their advantage to buy a cemetery, open a funeral home on it. This happened in Coleman at a couple of locations. And then go through their file cemetery records, who owns plots here, and contact them and say, we need to update your file. Come on out. And then they get them there, and they steer them into signing up with their funeral home and pre-needing the casket with them, whether they use their funeral home or not, selling the merchandise, the casket.
It's double dealing.
And it's true that was, that was the profit center for funeral directors. Their fees were kept very low to be competitive. And then the profit was more on the piece of furniture. A lot of the undertakers around the country came from the furniture maker. So it's the same markup on a coffin as on a dresser.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah.
No difference. Same guys making the same stuff back in the day. And do we think that the furniture businesses like Ethan Allen, are they evil? Are they ripping us off?
Well, it depends on how Ethan Allen is getting their business contacts, I suppose.
Yeah. To the point where they pass a law that says that we have to accept an outside casket from someone else. So it's like, we own the restaurant. These people can bring in their own steak, and we cannot charge them to cook it.
Do people do that? Do they buy a casket on Amazon and have it shipped to Duggan's? That's wild.
All the time. And we're not allowed to charge them even for getting rid of all the shipping materials that comes with it.
Oh, wow.
Because when we order a casket, they come from a reputable American, U.S. made by union labor casket companies. And they come on these frames that protect them from being damaged during shipment with reusable covers. And they take the frame back, and we have no garbage. And when somebody orders one from Costco, it shows up with all this styrofoam and plastic wrapping and massive. Imagine a box that size, cardboard box that size. Put all that in your recycle bin. We have the same recycle bin everyone else has. Where do we put all this garbage? We're not allowed to charge to dispose it. Thank you, Jackie Spear. She passed that law. That was her thing. It's ridiculous that we're victimized like this. And it's just public perception and, media misunderstanding. That's my point of view.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us today. This has been really informative, interesting, sometimes fun. I hate to use the word fun when we're talking about the death industry, but...
You put the fun in funeral?
Exactly.
It's like Fun Home, right?
Yeah.
That comic?
Yeah.
Yes, this was super interesting, Steven. Thank you.
Thanks.
Dead Reckoning, the podcast where death isn't the end of the story. Hosted by Courtney Minnick and Beth Weingardner, produced by Carolyn Kissick and Here Lies a Story, with art design by Dante Silliman. Our music is Act Calm by OTE. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Dead Reckoning on your favorite podcast platform, or email us at show@deadreckoningpodcast.com. You can follow Courtney at Here Lies a Story on Instagram and at Courtney Minnick on Blue Sky, and see more of her work at herelisastory.com. You can follow Beth at Beth Weingardner on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Mastodon, and see more of her work at bethweingardner.com.